Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. We're on session number 33.
Indeed. That's been, this is amazing. I can't believe how many we've done.
A lot.
Yeah.
And there are quite a few more to go, so we're going to keep rocking and rolling.
Yep.
All right. Last time, we had a couple of letters from Subba Row, one of Moria's star pupils, a young guy. I think he was around 25 maybe at this point. He was an attorney. He was a Brahmin. And when he met HPB in this lifetime, immediately remembered all of his esoteric training from previous lifetimes. And almost immediately became an expert on Vedanta. And so the Mahatmas were hoping to use him a lot. And he was a very good resource. So they were hoping to be able to use him to train Sinnett and Hume, because Hume all of a sudden kind of got his act together and started participating a little more frequently now. And it has a lot to do with the fact that it was the time of year, June, near the end of June, 1882, when the Sinnetts typically moved from Allahabad to Shimla for the summer. During the hot months, they went to higher altitude, which was at the base or in the foothills of the Himalaya mountains. And that's where many of the wealthy people, the English people, went during the summer. And because Sinnett was the editor of the Pioneer, one of the most important newspapers in India, he was given an allowance that permitted him to hobnob with the rich and famous, basically. The high government officials and the wealthy people, the movers and shakers in India. So obviously, if you're going to report on them and their doings around the country, you have to be within their circle. So we don't have any mention of Mrs. Sinnett during this period, but it was typical for her also to go. It would make sense. And their young son, who is around 5, I believe, at this point. So they're in Shimla. Let's read just a couple of things here that KH said in his remarks, because we covered this last time, but just to catch us up here. Speaking to Sinnett, he said, "My dear friend, I strongly advise you not to undertake right now a task beyond your strength and means, for once pledged, were you to break your promise, it would cut you off from any further progress for years, if not forever. I said from the first to Rishi Moria that his intention was kind, but his project was wild. How can you, in your position, undertake any such labor? Occultism is not to be trifled with. It demands all or nothing. I read your letter to Subba Row, forwarded by him to Moria, and I see you do not understand the first principles of chela training. Poor Subba Row is in a fix. That is why he does not answer you." And the fix was that he knew, because he was going through the training himself, and he was able to communicate with the Mahatmas. He knew what it took to make that happen. And he, for the life of him, couldn't figure out how Sinnett was going to be able to do this, since he had made none of the preparatory steps towards that. Hadn't even given up alcohol or meat eating, which apparently is absolutely essential if you are going to be an accurate receiver of information from the Mahatmas. So all of us at some point will have to do that. But as we learned, there are other steps that are far more important. Get rid of ego, get rid of anger, get your emotions down to where they're very controllable, and develop this love of humanity. If you've got that, you won't even be tempted to ever commit ethics violations. You won't be tempted to lie to anyone. You have to live with yourself. Why would you want to live with a liar and a thief? Someone who ruins someone else's reputation or destroys their chance to make progress because your ego is more important than the truth.
Actually, a very good point.
So all of these things factor into that. He continues that Subba Row is in a fix. On one hand, he has the indomitable HPB who plagues Morya's life to reward you, and Morya himself, who would love to gratify your aspirations if he could. But on the other hand, he encounters the Wall of China, which are the rules and the law in occultism. He knows what they are. Believe me, good friend, learn what you can under the circumstances. That is to say, the philosophy of the phenomena and our doctrines on cosmogony, the inner man, etc. Subba Row will help you to learn this. Though his terms, he being an initiated Brahmin, will be different from those of the Arhat Buddhist terminology, but essentially both are the same, identical in fact. My heart melts when I read Mr. Hume's sincere, noble letter, especially what I can read between the lines. Yes, to one from his standpoint, our policy must seem selfish and cruel. I wish I were the master. In 5 or 6 years, I hope to become my own guide, and things will be different then. So even KH wasn't yet at a level where he could make some of the decisions that Morya and other longer-term Mahatmas could make for themselves. He still had to ask permission for a lot of his projects that he had in mind. But he's hoping that in 5 or 6 years, he will have reached that status within the hierarchy where he too can make decisions without appealing to a higher source.
Isn't it interesting how quickly it moves at that stage? You know, we spend 700 lifetimes without even much progress at all. And then towards as we start becoming enlightened and approach our positions in the hierarchy, it moves much faster.
Yes. And the reason for that is we need all of the background experience.
Of course.
We have to make all of the mistakes, or at least a lot of mistakes.
The foundation, yes. The foundation
and
needs to be
learn
big.
from everybody else. Learn what we can of how life works. This is the unreal knowledge, the you, me. And then once you have seen enough and experienced enough of that part of life, and you look around and you say, is that all there is? And the answer is no. There's a heck of a lot more. But in order to make any further progress at that point, you need to get in touch with your soul, your higher self, that more spiritual part of you. It's there already. You just have to discover it and create the connection. So that's what we're working on, all of us. All right, now we're ready to go on to, I'm following Joy Mill's example. She put one letter out of sequence because it's, again, a letter from Subba Row. And it's the last major letter of this type that we will receive. So even though it follows a couple of other letters, we're going to move it up just to complete this trilogy of letters from Subba Row. Two of them directed directly to Sinnett. One of them directed to HPB with questions and comments, but it was about Sinnett and teaching him. So let's read this third letter from Subba Row, which is to Sinnett. Now, he's in a place called Coconada, which sounds Spanish, but it's not. It actually still exists. Now it's like spelled differently. It's Coconada or something like that. But it's on the east coast of India, on the way between Adyar and Calcutta. And he's getting ready to move to Madras, which is where Adyar is. And he's going to be very instrumental in a very short time in getting the headquarters moved from Bombay over to Adyar.
Oh, Subba Row was instrumental in that.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
So let's go ahead and read that letter from T. Subba Row.
Dear Sir.
Now, this is letter number 64, for those who are following the number. And it's toward the end of June, 1882. Go ahead.
In the other version, it's letter 131.
Yeah, in the original version, yeah.
Dear Sir, please kindly excuse me for not having sent you a reply to your letter up to this time. The qualified assent which you were pleased to give to the conditions laid down by me necessitated a reference to the brothers for their opinion and orders.
Now, Sinnett, when Subba Row told him what the requirements were in order to develop this psychic connection with the Mahatmas, kind of hedged. And he said, well, how about if I do this? And instead of just saying, yes, I can do it, or no, I can't do it, he kind of proposed meeting halfway, more or less. So let's go ahead.
And now I am sorry to inform you that anything like practical instruction in the ritual of occult science is impossible under the conditions you propose. So far as my knowledge goes, no student of occult philosophy has ever succeeded in developing his psychic powers without leading the life prescribed for such students. And it is not within the power of the teacher to make an exception in the case of any student. That's very true. You can't, because it'd be changing natural law.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. These rules that they follow have been used for millennia. And because they work, they know what works. So when something works, don't mess with it.
The rules laid down by the ancient teachers of occult science are inflexible, and it is not left to the discretion of any teacher either to enforce them or not to enforce them according to the nature of the existent circumstances. I love the way he speaks.
No, he's very concise.
He reminds me of Taimni. They kind of have a similar...
Well, Taimni is more difficult. He's
true.
Much clearer in his expositions.
That is true. If you find it impracticable to change the present mode of your life, you cannot but wait for practical instruction until you are in a position to make such sacrifices as occult science demands. And for the present, you must be satisfied with such theoretical instruction as it may be possible to give to you. Wow. It is hardly necessary now to inform you whether the instruction promised you in my first letter under the conditions therein laid down would develop in you such powers as would enable you either to see the brothers or converse with them clairvoyantly. To see the brothers or converse with them clairvoyantly. Mm-hmm. Okay. Occult training, however commenced, will in course of time necessarily develop such powers. That's a piece of wisdom there.
Yeah.
And that's what we always say. The powers will come. Just
naturally.
Yes. Without forcing them.
Yeah.
Don't jump up and let your butt hit the ground in lotus to shake some powers loose from your spine.
Yeah, people who are trying to force clairvoyant abilities are probably making a mistake.
I know.
It opens up a whole lot of potential problems. We've seen too many people who do that. In fact, we met one just a few days ago. And yeah, it actually slows down your progress. It pretty much cuts it off for this lifetime, and it could slow it down for 2 or 3 lifetimes. So why do that?
And to give one more thing on that, you don't usually know that you're being slowed down. What most of the time happens is, I think Terry will agree with this, you think you're making more progress because the hampering is a veil of illusion that makes you think that you've got something great and you're going places, basically. But really, you're so illusioned. We'll leave it at that.
It's even more Maya than you started with. Yes. What Paul is getting at. You open this exciting world, and yet it's a totally illusory world. So, yes, it's fun. Yes, it's exciting. You see these visions and things that you've never imagined before, but it isn't actually helpful. You can't share that with anyone except in words and describing it. It doesn't help them, and it, in truth, doesn't help you.
You will be taking a very low view of occult science if you were to suppose that the mere acquirement of psychic powers is the highest and the only desirable result of occult training. There you go. The mere acquisition of wonder-working powers can never secure immortality for the student of occult science unless he has learnt the means of shifting gradually his sense of individuality from his corruptible material body to the incorruptible and eternal non-being represented by his 7th principle. Wow.
He is so good at stating it very succinctly.
In other words, your physical body is very temporary. Don't get too attached to how you look, how big your muscles are, how much money is in your bank account. Remember more so that you're a soul connected to the all-soul, and this body is here for work. If we get too wrapped up in the opposite, aka ego, it's not going to work.
And the phrase he used to let go of the corruptible and focus on the incorruptible.
Love it.
I'm not sure, but that's exactly the words that Jesus uses in the Bible. And
I knew I'd heard that
He
somewhere.
probably knew that. And he says, why would you store up your treasures on earth where moths can corrupt and where thieves can break in and steal? When you store up treasures in heaven, meaning in the spiritual realm, it's safe. And
Incorruptible.
Incorruptible. And as we said last time, that is our natural state. That's what we're trying to recover. The prodigal son has had enough of this crazy life out here and decides he's going to go back to his real home, which is his spiritual home.
To be even more specific, we reference our chart a lot of the koshas, or the different bodies that we have, and this is not the astral realm. This is above or deeper than that. The astral realm is what we were saying earlier, is the illusion world that many people think is the pinnacle of spiritual development. The incorruptible 7th principle is far different, far beyond that. The higher mental or causal, the buddhic, the atmic, those are the incorruptible parts of ourselves.
So the corruptible is the quaternary, the physical body, the prana that goes with it, the astral, and the lower part of the mental plane. That is the corruptible part.
And those are the parts that die when we die.
And the incorruptible is the Atma, Buddhi, Manas, the Higher Triad, that part which is real.
Bingo. Please consider this as the real aim of occult science and see whether the rules you are called upon to obey are necessary or not to bring about this mighty change. He's good. Under the present circumstances, the brothers have asked me to assure you and Mr. Hume that I would be fully prepared to give you both such theoretical instruction as I may be able to give in the philosophy of the ancient Brahminical religion and esoteric Buddhism. Wow. I'm going to leave this place for Madras on the 30th of this month. I beg to remain yours sincerely, T. Subba Row.
Yeah. No, he's very good and very intelligent.
He seems less reluctant now.
Because Sinnett was talking about developing clairvoyance.
Right.
And after consulting with the Mahatmas, they agreed with him. So you don't, as a chela, simply do whatever a Mahatma suggests to you. You present, if you have a different point of view, they listen to you. And sometimes they say, you know what, you're absolutely right. And in this case, they said the chela was right. Moria was being a little too optimistic.
Wow.
And so they agreed with him. So he said, what I can do is teach you some of the exoteric. It's still esoteric because it isn't normally taught to the outside world, but it's information that doesn't require the intuition that you would need.
He is saying it's esoteric Buddhism and the ancient Brahmin religion.
Yes. But there are two aspects to it. One that you can transmit as you would any other information, and another part that without the development of a contact with your higher self, you're not going to understand.
That's the end of that letter.
Okay, now we have more of the doctrine. Yeah. This is interesting because now we're talking about rounds and races, human development. Remember, we've had two cosmological notes series, and now we're going to get a little bit more added to this. Now, this is about human development on Earth. We had just a little bit of exposition on that in a previous session. And we're not going to get a whole lot more, but what we want to do is simply give you kind of the outline and some particular points to it. Because as we know, you can learn this sort of stuff by studying theosophy. This is out there. This information is out there. What you can't learn through that method is self-transformation. And that's what we try to bring to the table. So you have to learn some of this doctrine that it is available out in the public. You have to understand the general concepts of it. And then when you develop your connection with your higher self, that all of a sudden makes way more sense, and all of the stray pieces start to fit together. And that's when you become a useful chela in the work of the Mahatmas. All right, so this seems to be a series, and it's not very many, just a few questions that Sinnett wrote down, and the answer was directed to him. So I'm assuming that Sinnett may have sent them, transmitted them to KH before he went to Shimla. But the answer came once he was already at Shimla.
But how does this relate to what Subba Row just wrote and that interaction? I mean, so is Subba Row at this point, this is the same June 1882.
Well, this is similar information to what he would be giving them also. So KH is giving the outline and hoping that Subba Row will fill in more details for Sinnett.
Okay.
All right, this is, now I'm going to read the questions that Sinnett sent, and then Paul will read the answers from KH. So this is received at Shimla. This is letter number 61, because we're going back to the regular
I wonder
sequence.
if Sinnett's questions, if it was Sinnett's handwriting.
I don't recognize his handwriting yet.
Or maybe KH repeated?
Oh, yeah, let me explain that. It's written on wide paper. So what Sinnett did was to put his questions on the left side, numbered, and then left room on the right side for KH to reply.
So when the reply came, the whole document came back?
He got his questions back.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see this on the Theosophical Wiki website.
So this is one of the examples for those of us who are curious to see these actual letters.
Yeah.
This one exists.
Has both Sinnett's and KH's handwriting.
And this is probably in the London Museum still?
Oh, yeah. They're out at the London, at the British Library.
Okay.
All right. Question number 1. Some fifth round men have already begun to appear on Earth. Now, when we talk about fifth round men, we have to go back to our session on cosmological notes. I believe it is our session number 20 where we covered most of this. And it refers to this chart, which, starting with planet A, going around to planet G, constitutes a manvantara, the length of rule of one Manu, which I forget the exact amount, 304 million years or something like that. And then I believe 70 of those, including all of the pralayas in between, constitutes a day and night of Brahma.
70?
Which is about 4.3 billion years in the Vedantic system. Mm-hmm. So each round, transferring from the most spiritual down through different levels of increasing materiality until we get to D, which is the planet Earth, and which is at its densest right now, because it gets denser with each round. So round 1 was the setting up of the mineral world. Round 2 was the setting up of the plant kingdom. This corresponds to all of the history of the world as scientists are discovering. The third round was to set up all of the animal kingdom, and only in the fourth round did humans, in their full mindful state, arrive on this planet. So that's the fourth round man was the first thinking man. And the fifth round hasn't occurred yet. But what he's saying is that there are already on this planet some people who have gone ahead. They're running the race faster than the rest of us. And so there are some fifth round individuals on this planet. So he's asking, in what way are they, the fifth round people, distinguishable from fourth round men of the seventh earthly incarnation? So these earthly incarnations, he's talking about a separate cycle within a cycle. So each round at each stage also has cycles.
Wow.
We're not going to get too bogged down in it. Just keep in mind that we're talking about larger cycles, a cycle within that cycle, and then a cycle within that cycle. In what way are they distinguishable from fourth round men of the seventh earthly incarnation? I suppose they are in the first incarnation of the fifth round, and that a tremendous advance will be achieved when the fifth round people get to their seventh incarnation. All right. So that's the question and the supposition that he came up with.
And this doesn't even really speak to the soul's reincarnation over hundreds of
Not
physical
yet.
lifetimes. This is not even that.
No, we're
this
just
is something,
talking about the big picture.
Yeah, this is
So,
all right.
and that's why theosophy is so difficult for people to grasp. They try to approach it like taking a chemistry class in college.
It's not linear like that. It can't.
No,
A plus B does not equal C.
No, it is. It's synthetic. And by that, we mean you get a bit here, you get something over here, you got something here, and in itself, none of it really makes sense. It's only when you have comprehended enough of these different little bits and pieces that you can start assembling the jigsaw puzzle.
And then you have a glimpse into how the universe actually works. And
Yes.
it makes things make more sense. All right, let's see what KH says to that. The natural-born seers, or rishis, seers with a capital S, and clairvoyance of Mrs. Kingsford's and Mr. Maitland's types.
Those are the fifth round individuals on Earth.
Oh. The great adepts of whatsoever country.
Okay, so that's the second
Group. The geniuses, whether in arts, politics, or religious reform. That's another group.
So, yeah, those are the most advanced souls on our planet. The natural-born seers, meaning those who have some degree of connection with their higher self automatically. Second are the adepts who have learned the occult sciences, so the Mahatmas themselves, and then the geniuses, whether it's an artist or a great statesman, or the religious reformers like the Buddha and Jesus.
No great physical distinction yet. Too early. That will come later on. I wonder what that could even be.
So, as we know, bodies, the vehicles that this consciousness uses, grows to match that. And there aren't enough of these fifth round individuals
to physically
for the
reproduce
physical
them.
body to have caught up. That will take thousands of years.
So what would the body of an enlightened person look like? Maybe taller, healthier, more efficient somehow?
We would have to use our science fiction minds to come
Yeah.
up with something, and it would be nothing more than that, a fantasy.
Yeah. Wow.
But some of the Mahatmas do know more. They aren't sharing it, though.
Wow.
Now, here's one other thing. So Sinnett had written on the left side of the sheet his questions, but he hadn't left a whole lot of room, the equivalent amount of room. So what KH did was he used up that room, but then he took another sheet of his own paper and he added an appendix with additional information on some of the questions. So from his appendix, we have additional information on this question.
He says, if you turn to appendix number 1, you'll find it explained. And here we go. Every spiritual individual has a gigantic evolutionary journey to perform, the prodigal son, a tremendous gyratory progress to accomplish. A gyroscope spins. Yeah, it spins.
It's because it's a cyclic thing.
Mm-hmm. First, at the very beginning of the great Manvantaric rotation, so that's not just one Manvantara, that's the Maha Manvantara.
And I'm assuming that means a day and night of Brahma.
it could also mean a life of Brahma. I mean, because he incarnates too, supposedly.
That's true. So
I mean,
all we know for sure is it's a hell of a long time.
Yeah, exactly. The Manvantaric rotation. Okay, from the first to last of the man-bearing planets, as on each of them, the monad has to pass through 7 successive races of man, from the dumb offshoot of the ape.
Now, when they say dumb, they mean non-speaking, without a mind, as we know it, not a human mind.
They have brains, but not a mind. And by the way, we should say monad is kind of like a soul, even more undifferentiated, though, or more closer to spirit. But it's a packet of
is right, which constitutes a person, an individual.
I'll actually start this over so it's more coherent. Every spiritual individual has a gigantic evolutionary journey to perform, a tremendous gyratory progress to accomplish. First, at the very beginning of the great Manvantaric rotation, from first to last of the man-bearing planets, as on each of them, the monad has to pass through 7 successive races of man. From the dumb offshoot of the ape, the latter strongly differentiating from the now known specimens, up to the present 5th race, or variety, and through 2 more races before he will be done only with this earth, and then on to the next, higher and higher still. But we will confine our attention to this earth. Let's pause there for a second. There's so much. So the monad has to pass through 7 successive races of man. Now, that's Sinnett was calling that incarnations, so that's very confusing. Let's not use the word incarnation. Let's use what KH said. We have to pass through 7 races. Now, let's define that.
When we talk about races, we're not talking about
skin color here.
No, not at all. And this is where a lot of early theosophists went horribly wrong. Forget anything about that. That's why we tell you anything from the early 1900s that was written by theosophists, throw it in the trash. Go back to HPB, go back to the Mahatma Letters that were written in the 1880s, and you'll be safe. So when he's talking about a race of individuals, he's talking about the 4 major groups that scientists had, 3 that scientists had discovered. They thought there were only 3, I think it was, And the Mahatma said there are actually 4, but they're not too far off. So starting with cavemen, that was what scientists said was the first race of human beings. So it's big, huge groups of individuals.
Almost like civilizations in a way, even though apes weren't necessarily a civilization, but others are.
And as we will find very quickly, that is only the physical representation. It's only a vehicle. You can have a 5th round individual born in a 3rd round physical body. It doesn't matter what the body looks like. We'll see. Just keep that in mind.
Well, I guess the masters are born into human bodies, and these bodies are not their level, but this is all we have.
Right, exactly.
For them.
Exactly. Yeah. And for various reasons, a soul will choose to incarnate in a specific type of physical body. The physical body doesn't determine that individual's intellect or intelligence or level of advancement.
Terry, that might be where other cultures got the idea of transmigration. They might have gotten the idea that if you're naughty, you'll come back as a cockroach or something. That might have come from this fact.
Could.
But it's not how it works, but that might be where that idea came from.
No.
That's interesting.
We'll get a little more, and this is the whole point, is to get little insights here and there. It's not to try to understand rounds and races and root races and sub-races. It's to just get a general idea and a little smattering of tidbits of information.
Does he list the names, the Hyperborean?
No.
And he doesn't? Okay.
He talks about the third and fourth and fifth round individuals.
Do we, at some point, want to bring those names in the reference book where we got those?
Maybe not.
Okay.
We
can
it's
delete
not
this.
all that important.
Okay.
That's what we're stressing here. Don't stress yourself about trying to understand all of the ins and outs. Get a very broad picture of this.
Okay. Each of the 7 races sends 7 branchlets from the parent branch. And through each of these, in turn, man has to evolve before he passes on to the next higher race. And repeat that 7 times. Holy frickin' moly.
Yeah, so he's laying out cycles within cycles within cycles. Keep going.
Well, you may open wide your eyes, good friend, and feel puzzled, but it is so. Wow. Wow. The branchlets typify various specimens of humanity, both physically and spiritually, and none of us can miss one single rung of the ladder. With all that said, there is no reincarnation as taught by the London seeress, Mrs. Kingsford, as the intervals between the rebirths are too immeasurably long to permit of any such fantastic ideas.
I don't know what she was teaching, but she gets insights here and there that are absolutely correct, but then she mixes it with other fantasies. And
she said that the period of time between rebirths is too long to permit any.
So she apparently was of the opinion that people would reincarnate fairly rapidly when, in fact, there were long periods in between.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, please bear in mind that when I say man, I mean a human being of our type.
Now, this is important. He's speaking from personal experience here.
There are other and innumerable manvantaric chains of globes bearing intelligent beings, both in and out of our solar system, and of the apexes of evolutionary beings in their respective chains. Physically and intellectually, some are lower and others are immeasurably higher than the man of our chain. Wow. Wow. But beyond mentioning them, we will not speak of these at present.
Remember his samadhi? He was traveling interstellar space.
Wow. Wow.
So that means he visited other solar systems in the universe, some that may have been lower in development than our level of humanity, some that may have been immeasurably higher. He's speaking from experience.
Goodness. Wow. Man has to pass through every race, then making 7 successive entrances and exits, and developing intellect from the lowest degree to the highest in succession. In short, his Earth cycle, with its rings and sub-rings, is the exact counterpart of the Great Cycle, only in miniature.
As above, so below.
Macrocosm is reflecting in the microcosm, and vice versa. I wonder if he's using the word rings and chains interchangeably.
He may
Rings
be,
and
because
chains.
they were struggling for nomenclature, and they went back and forth. And that's another reason why this gets
Extremely,
very confusing.
yes.
So don't get hung up on it.
Okay. Bear in mind again that the intervals, even between these special race reincarnations, are enormous, as even the dullest of the African bushmen has to reap the reward of his karma equally with his brother bushmen who may be 6 times more intelligent.
Now, when he refers to specific physical races on Earth, he's not denigrating them. He's not putting them down. He's simply using them as examples, and we'll get more insight as we go along. He is not racist. theosophy is not racist.
Your ethnographers and anthropologists would do well to always keep this in mind, this unvarying septenary law which runs throughout the works of nature. Yeah. You are right in saying that a tremendous advance will be achieved when the fifth round people get to their seventh incarnation.
Yeah. All right, so we've got a little bit of insight there. Let's go on to question number 2. But if a first through fifth round man devoted himself to occultism and became an adept, would he escape further earthly incarnations? Great question.
Yeah.
If you become an adept, are you done? What is...
Well, he says no, except for Buddha.
Earthly incarnations. So he's talking about physical human bodies. No, except for Buddha. And now he's talking about arhats. He's talking about Mahatmas, not higher levels in the hierarchy.
Well, he's saying except for Buddha. Buddha is one of the highest.
Right. Well,
or higher than...
He outran the rest of us,
yeah.
Let's say.
Okay.
He is part of our humanity. But as we'll find out, he ran the race so well that we'll see. He went way beyond what Mrs. Kingsford and Mr. Maitland
But
were
a
able
fifth
to do.
round man, he said earlier that the adepts are fifth round. And
Yes.
Fifth race. No, he said, no, fifth race.
Right.
Wait, are rounds and races the same? Oh, goodness.
I couldn't tell you for sure.
Because if the adepts are fifth, whatever, the adepts don't need to come back in the physical body.
Yes, they do, because we have to become seventh round individuals. There are 7 rounds that we as humans will have to go through. We're almost all of us in the 4th round. Some have gone so far ahead that they would be considered 5th round, but we all have to complete 7 rounds of experience.
I wonder if we need to amend the last chapter of our book.
Well,
no, the Nirmanakaya is higher than these guys than the adepts. I know I'm getting too technical, but when we have the choice...
The Buddha, for example, is a Nirmanakaya. Let's see.
If they can choose to come back or not, I thought that was at the level of KH, but maybe that's not... When we achieve that... Because he's not a full adept yet, I guess.
KH is not, no. No, he's still got a ways to go, even in an adeptship.
Wow. Okay. So this is...
Yeah, it's...
I know. I'm asking too
Trust
many.
me.
I try to get too many. I'm doing what Terry says don't do. I'm trying to get all the details.
Yeah.
All right. So he says, no, except for Buddha, a 6th round being, as he had run the race so successfully in his previous incarnations that he outran even his predecessors.
He was a good runner.
Wow. But then such a man is to be found once in a billion human creatures.
1 in a billion, which if you consider that there are apparently 60 billion souls in our group, that would only be 60 of them in all of humanity. Everyone who has ever lived and ever will live.
He differed from other men as much in his physical appearance as in spirituality and knowledge. Really? I wonder how he differed so much.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement.
Yet even he escaped further reincarnations only on this earth. And when the last of the 6th round men of the 3rd ring is gone from this earth, the great teacher will have to be reincarnated on the next planet.
All right, so once we get back to the 7th, actual physical 7th round, he will reincarnate again to finish that round.
The great teacher, that might be the Manu, the first
No,
man?
I think he is talking about the Buddha.
Oh, yes. Okay. And, okay, because he just said earlier that the Buddha has finished his physical work on this planet,
Right.
but not the next.
Right.
Okay. Oh, he has more work to do. And since he sacrificed nirvanic bliss and rest for the salvation of his fellow creatures, he will be reborn in the highest, the seventh ring of the upper planet.
So he won't even have to reincarnate as a physical human being, but as the most spiritual aspect of those human beings in the seventh round.
So he sacrificed nirvana, but he didn't, because he's still hanging out around our system here.
Yes, he still does interact,
He's
just not on a daily basis.
He didn't go to eternal rest.
No.
He chose. He is the Nirmanakaya. He chose
He is a Nirmanakaya,
yes,
absolutely.
Okay. He will be reborn. Yeah, that's amazing. Until then, until he reincarnates, he will overshadow every decimillennium. So that's every 10,000 years?
Decimillennium is 1/10 of 1,000 years. So
every 100.
Out of every 1,000 years, during 100 years of that period, that's what we're talking about. The other term is decamillennium. That would be 10,000 years.
Huh. He will overshadow every decimillennium, meaning every 100 years he'll overshadow.
No, 100 years out of every 1,000 years.
Okay, every 100 years of every 1,000. And let's add, quote, has overshadowed already a chosen individual who generally overturned the destinies of nations. Holy crap. See Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, last paragraph on pages 34 and first on 35.
All right, let's see who he's talking about.
Oh my gosh. Who overturns the destinies of nations?
All right. The last paragraph of 34. Now, this is Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, Science. Volume 2 is on theology. So keep in mind that Isis Unveiled was the very first attempt of the Mahatmas, and this was published in 1877, to expose a little bit of their esoteric doctrine. The first attempt. But here's one of the problems. The adepts were so interested in this project that KH and Moria had undertaken with HPB that they wanted to get in on it too. So as Olcott describes in his books, Old Diary Leaves, he could tell when specific Mahatmas came in to occupy HPB's body and write or dictate information to him. And so numerous different Mahatmas participated in this. But because each one comes from a different field and a different background, it kind of created a hodgepodge of information. And I think it's specifically for that reason that when they decided to redo this in the form of the secret doctrine, it was limited to two Mahatmas, KH and Moria, and HPB.
It's cool that we can see the masters trying things and not working out.
They make lots and lots of mistakes, but guess what? That's the way life is.
So I want to make sure that our viewers understand the gravity of what this is. So when someone is overshadowed, we hear it every day in spiritual circles. Oh, I'm being overshadowed by the master XYZ. Name your master. I'm being. So it is no longer Paul. I am now speaking to you from whoever. That's what overshadowed means. And we here have an adept who we trust saying that the Buddha overshadowed an individual who took part in changing the destinies of nations. And we'll see who this person...
Well, maybe. Let's see. This is what is said in in Isis Unveiled in 1877. Thus, all those great characters who tower like giants in the history of mankind, like Buddha, Siddhartha, and Jesus, in the realm of spiritual, and Alexander the Macedonian and Napoleon the Great in the realm of physical conquests, were but reflexed images of human types which had existed 10,000 years before. In the preceding decimillennium, reproduced by the mysterious powers controlling the destinies of our world. There is no prominent character in all the annals of sacred or profane history whose prototype we cannot find in the half-fictitious and half-real traditions of bygone religions and mythologies, as the star glimmering at an immeasurable distance above our heads in the boundless immensity of the sky reflects itself in the smooth waters of a lake, so does the imaginary imagery of men of the antediluvian ages reflect itself in the periods we can embrace in an historical retrospect. Now, is he talking about overshadowing Jesus or Alexander the Great or Napoleon? My guess would be Jesus.
Wow.
Because he's more interested in the spiritual aspect rather than the temporal. But
wow.
There you go.
Let's go to the churches on Sunday and share that with everybody.
Hey, be my guest. Be my guest. Yeah.
Whoa.
All right, so
That's
you
amazing.
see some of the insights that we begin to get. And yeah, this is exciting, but the most exciting thing is not information. It's about self-transformation.
What do we do with this data that we're receiving?
Exactly. You know, you can tell people the visions that you got on the astral plane, and it might impress a few people, but how does it change the world?
There is something practical about this, that this taking the information and making it real. My students who come to physical classes a lot and breathwork classes, we talk about the functions of the energy centers in the bodies, and you can call them chakras, call them vortices of energy. The navel chakra, the purpose, each one has many purposes, but the navel center has a main job of transforming something. Of course, there's physical food being digested, so your physical body can absorb the nutrients. But it's more than just the physical food that the Manipura chakra digests. We can digest this so we can use it. Just like you eat a banana and your belly uses juices, then your intestines do more things and extracts the nutrient. That center also helps us process information into usable wisdom.
And prana.
Yes, of course. And so the physical practices do assist with this. You don't have to figure it out all on your own. Do the practices, build energy in your body, do some mindful breathing, do some twists that activate the navel center, loosen the body up, do some back bends and forward folds. And when this center of the body is active and you can feel there's a flow of energy there, you will digest not only food better, but you will digest information better. That's how the physical practices coincide with the spiritual part.
And when you combine that with meditation, that's when it becomes very powerful.
Yes, the actual insights do come during the still meditations.
All right, we're on the third question. Is there any essential spiritual difference between a man and a woman? Or is sex a mere accident of each birth, the ultimate future of the individual furnishing the same opportunities?
I can answer that one.
And what is it?
Yes, of course there's it's based on karma, completely. I'm surprised he's asking that, because all he has to do is look and see about the experiences that each sex is able to receive. Just the fact that a woman really cannot have the same experiences as a man, and vice versa.
But
So-
remember, he's a complete novice.
But he's very insightful.
And in 1882, no one in Europe or in the UK was saying, "Oh, was I a different sex in a different lifetime?"
Oh,
They didn't even know about reincarnation.
okay.
They believed you live one time and that's it. You get one shot at life and you're done.
Oh my. Let's see the answer. A mere accident, as you say. What?
Keep reading.
I did, but that's funny how he would start it with that. Maybe that's sarcasm. Generally, a work of chance, yet guided by individual karma, moral aptitudes, characteristics, and deeds of a previous birth. So how is it a work of chance? No,
I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that.
because
but
none of that says chance. Karma, moral
Exactly.
Okay, weird.
He said it might look like chance,
Okay,
but the fact is, it's your karma.
Yeah.
Your karma requires, in order for it to be worked out, a certain set of circumstances, and that includes the sex of your physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as Paul said, there's no way that you can get the same experiences in a male body as you can in a female body. We all have to go through different combinations. We have to go through all the different ethnic groups, all the different types of human existence. And it's not at any given time important which one you're in. It's the experiences and the information that you're gathering, the experience you're gathering.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
That's simple.
I'm glad he asked it, though.
Yeah. Okay, now we're on. That was a very short one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question 4. The majority of the superior classes. Now, he and Hume still consider English the superior class. The majority of the superior classes of civilized countries on Earth now, I understand to be seventh ring people. That is the seventh earthly incarnation of the fourth round. So the highest subrace of the fourth round, or the highest group of humanity from the fourth round. The Australian Aborigines, I understand to be of a low ring, and if so, which one? And are the lower and inferior classes of civilized countries of various rings, or of the ring just prior to the seventh, which would be the sixth? And are all seventh ring people born in the superior classes, or might some be found among the poor? So he's showing his racism, let's say, but let's see what KH has to say.
Not necessarily. Now,
So
let's see.
he's probably referring to the
last.
first of these,
Okay.
where he said,
The Australian Aborigines.
right, are they to be considered of a lower ring?
Not necessarily. Refinement, polish, and brilliant education in your sense of these words have very little to do with the course of higher nature's law.
Yeah, pay real close attention because this is profound.
Well, we've seen this before with some of the chelas that don't appear to be of the superior class. They have dark skin, which back in those days, maybe dirty clothes, and yet they're nearly enlightened or enlightened in a certain sense, and they're not born into what Sinnett says is the superior class.
Exactly. So Sinnett and Hume's idea that they are the pinnacle of human development on Earth, KH doesn't necessarily agree with.
Well, right. Take a seventh ring African or a fifth ring Mongolian, and you can educate him if taken from the cradle and transform him into the most brilliant and accomplished English lord, except for his physical appearance. Yet he will still remain outwardly just an intellectual parrot.
Now, this conjures up the idea of the movie My Fair Lady.
Oh.
You probably don't know about that.
I did.
It's based on a play by George Bernard Shaw, which was called Pygmalion. And it was a bet between two of these highly sophisticated Englishmen of the late 1800s. And one of them was a linguist, a renowned professor at the university. And he bet his friend that he could take any woman from the gutters, the slums of East London, the Cockney-speaking poor people, and he could transform her into a person that he could pass off as an empress or a very highly sophisticated woman. And his friend said, okay, I'll bet you money on that. And so they did exactly that. He went to the slums, picked out an interesting character there, Audrey Hepburn in the movie. It's a really interesting movie. And he proceeded to transform her from a Cockney accent gutter snipe, as he called her at one point, into this very, very sophisticated lady. And did exactly that, passed her off as a member of high society, among other high society people in England. So that's what he's referring to. It's all an outward show. Where's the substance? We're talking about human spirituality. What has that to do with this outward display of erudition or knowledge or how you speak or how you look? This is what we're talking about. People get caught up in this outward display and they completely ignore the qualities that really count: kindness, compassion, love of humanity. That's what is really important, none of this other stuff. All right, so now he's got an appendix to this question too. So go ahead and read appendix 2.
Nor has wealth or poverty or high or low birth any influence upon it, for this is all a result of their karma. That's what we teach as well. We got it from them.
Yeah.
Neither has what you call civilization much to do with the progress. It is the inner man, the spirituality, the illumination of the physical brain by the light of the spiritual or divine intelligence that is the test. Wow, it's amazing how Patanjali says some very similar things, how the brain or the mind is illumined by the soul's consciousness or the higher self's. Illumines is the similar wording here.
No, that's the difference between a genius and someone who is, for example, a capitalist who creates a huge empire.
The Australians, the Eskimos, the Bushmen, the Vedas.
And Vedas are a group of primitive people in Sri Lanka,
etc., are all side-shooting branchlets of that branch which you call cavemen.
So physically, these are the most primitive bodies on this planet, the oldest ones. But he's going to tell us more about that.
The third race, or the second according to your modern science, that evolved on this globe. Now, we have a new word, globe. That's probably the same as planet.
Well, on this physical Earth.
Okay, on this Earth, okay. They are the remnants of the seventh ring cavemen, remnants that have ceased to grow and are the arrested forms of life doomed to eventual decay in the struggle of existence, in the words of your correspondent.
Now, forms of life, this is the physical vehicle.
The Darwin stuff, the Darwin process.
Exactly. So it takes a long time for older forms to die out, and they do. it took a long time for them to develop, and it takes a long time for them to die out. You don't just all of a sudden kill everybody who happens to be in one of those forms.
Yeah. This is controversial.
Well,
Probably.
it is among some people because, and here's the point. You can have somebody who is occupying, for example, one of the
Eskimo body or
Bushman or Aborigines in Australia, and they're just as brilliant as anyone else. It doesn't matter what body they're. It has to do with their karma. It has nothing to do with their development, their spiritual development. Please understand that.
Yes, and as we mentioned too, an adept or a chela may be occupying a body that is in one of these primitive is one of the primitive bodies.
Yes.
The shaman, the wise people in the cultures, they might be adepts or chelas themselves.
Exactly, and all the more reason why we do not judge people based on outward appearance.
Exactly. See Isis chapter 1, and so he's referencing the Isis Unveiled book. The divine essence, or Purusha, also known as your soul or your higher self, like a luminous arc, proceeds to form a circle, the Mahamanvantaric chain, and having attained the highest, or its first starting point.
So that most spiritual, and this is after a previous round or previous Manvantara,
bends back again and returns to Earth, the first globe, bringing a higher type of humanity in its vortex, thus 7 times. Well, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
When the reincarnation occurs, it's now in a higher grade of school, a higher environment for more learning. Approaching our Earth, it grows more and more shadowy until, upon touching ground, it becomes as black as night.
And by that, he means completely separated from spirit.
Dense.
Or almost. So dense that the light doesn't shine on it.
As we perceive to be individuals on this level. That is, it is matter outwardly, the spirit or Purusha being concealed or sheathed. That's why we have the word kosha to describe how this Purusha is sheathed, being concealed under a quintuple armor of the first 5 principles. He's probably referring to the the 5 kosha system. We talk about 7 layers of bodies. Now, see underlined 3 lines on page 5 and the word mankind. Read human races, and for that of civilization, read spiritual evolution of that particular.
Now, this is for anybody who wants to delve into
Isis
Unveiled, because he's giving a reference here, and here's what he says. He said they had to conceal information at that incipient, tentative stage of the Theosophical Society. So he's giving a clue here. Anybody that really wants to delve into this, go ahead and read that again from...
now.
Yeah.
Now see underlined 3 lines on page 5, and for the word mankind, read human races, and for that of civilization, read spiritual evolution of that particular race, and you have the truth, which had to be concealed at the incipient, tentative stage of the Theosophical Society.
So he'll point out later, none of this is intended to unveil Isis. It's a little glimpse here, a little glimpse there, and it requires a tremendous amount of work on the part of the pupil after having developed the purification necessarily to be in touch with your higher self, and with the help of these adepts to actually comprehend it.
This is a little nugget here too. He's saying, take the word civilization and replace that with spiritual evolution of the race. In a book it has been said before that the different the rise and fall of different civilizations we think of that as cultures that rise and fall, like the Mayans or the Incans or the Aztecs, or if you believe in Atlantis, that kind of thing, civilization. But he's saying to not think of them as civilizations, think of them as the evolution of a race. Rise and fall.
Right.
It's
and
cycles.
And this is the point, is that the more spiritually advanced ones come in at a certain point, and then at another point in that physical civilization, they leave that. And then you start getting less advanced individuals in that physical.
And that would probably signify the decline of that.
Exactly. And that's why none of them last forever.
Yes.
They get a period of focus from the spiritual hierarchy, and then that focus at some point shifts to something else. And that's what causes the rise and fall. No, that's very good.
And that's where the Noah's flood.
And this is what I'm trying to point out. Don't get bogged down in details. Just get a little glimpse here and there, and that's perfectly adequate.
It is. A mainstream concept, though, is the flood myth that almost every culture has. It's not only Noah. It's most ancient cultures have a flood myth, which signifies the decline of that particular civilization or period of focus.
And as we will learn in a future letter, it had nothing to do with God being angry at people. It was part of the natural ebb and flow of things. Civilizations have to come to an end at some point. Anything that has a beginning has an end. All right, now he's referring to pages 13, 14, and 32 of Isis Unveiled, if anyone cares to delve into that. But what he says is very interesting.
So we're still answering those questions from Sinnett. Remembering the difference between the Manvantaras as therein calculated and the Maha Manvantara, complete 7 rounds between 2 pralayas. Now remember, pralayas are periods of rest in between periods of activity. The 4 yugas returning 7 times. Now the yugas, it's an astrological cycle. A complete cycle is all 4 yugas.
So now he's giving him kind of an outline of the time periods we're talking about. He says,
so the 4 yugas return 7 times, once for each race. That's very clear, actually. If you look at the Satya Yuga, Kali Yuga, and then Dwapara and Treta Yuga, the 4 yugas returning 7 times, one for each race. Having done so, take your pen and calculate. This will make you swear. But that won't hurt your karma too much. That's funny. That's funny.
KH is so funny sometimes. It will make you swear, but don't worry.
It won't hurt
HPB swears too, even though she denied it.
Lip profanity finds it deaf.
Meaning karma.
Okay.
Karma doesn't... And here's what he's pointing out. Saying, damn it, it's not going to affect your karma much. But if you do a spell to injure someone psychically or physically, that is damning someone. That is literally damning someone. When you curse them, that is different. If you just say, damn it, then...
You're not really intending to...
Don't worry. You're not going to hell because you said damn.
Right. Good point. Read page 301 attentively in this connection, not with the swearing part, but with that of evolution. That's funny. Read the last line, quote, and now comes a mystery, end quote, and continue on to page 304. Isis was not unveiled, but sufficiently large holes were made in the veil to allow fleeting glances by the student's own intuition.
And that's the point.
He's so good.
Yeah.
In this collection of quotations from various philosophic and esoteric truths purposely veiled, behold our doctrine, which is now being partially taught to Europeans for the first time. You and your buddy Hume.
So Yeah, this is the very first time
Wow.
that they are revealing any of this to the Western world. The Asians have had this for thousands of years.
And they look more primitive than
Yeah,
Sinnett.
and Sinnett and Humor are absolutely convinced that they are far superior to them. Number 5, the old lady told me that the bulk of the inhabitants of this country, meaning India, are, in some respects, less advanced than Europeans, although more spiritual. Are they on a lower ring of the same round, or does the difference refer to some principle of national cycles which has nothing to do with individual progress?
Most of the peoples of India belong to the oldest or the earliest branchlet of the 5th human race. I have requested Moria to end his letter to you with a short summary of the last scientific theory of your learned ethnographers and naturalists to save myself some work. Read what he writes and then turn to number 3 of my appendix.
Now, I don't know what that was because we don't seem to have that.
Okay.
But go ahead and read what he added to it.
In any other letters around this one, there's nothing from
Yeah,
Moria.
maybe we'll find it, but
okay.
I couldn't locate it at first.
So here's number 3 of KH's appendix. As said in my answer on your notes, most of the peoples of India, with the exception of the Semitic Moguls,
And that would be the Muslims.
okay,
From about the 16th to the 19th century, they had invaded from Persia and other parts of the Middle East and had taken over large portions of India. And it was only when the British came that they chased some of them out.
belong to the oldest branchlet of the present 5th human race, which was evolved in Central Asia more than 1 million years ago. Western science, finding good reasons for the theory of human beings having inhabited Europe 400,000 years before your era, this can't shock you so much as to prevent you from drinking wine tonight at your dinner. Yet Asia has, as well as Australia, Africa, America, and the most northward regions, its remnants of the 4th and even of the 3rd race, cavemen and Iberians. At the same time, we have more of the 7th ring men of the 4th race than Europe. So he's saying in India, right? At the same time, we have more of the 7th ring of the 4th race than Europe, and more of the 1st ring of the 5th round. Why he's using race and round interchangeably?
I don't know, because they were struggling,
yeah.
as I said, to come up with names.
As older than the European branchlets, our men have naturally come in earlier. Their being less advanced in civilization and refinement troubles their spirituality but very little. Karma being an animal which remains indifferent to pumps and white kid gloves. What are pumps?
Pumps,
like high heels?
Fancy, yes.
Oh, okay.
No, the fancy
High
heels that rich people wore in Europe.
Neither your knives nor forks, operas nor drawing rooms will follow you any more in your onward progress than will the dried leaf-colored robes of the British aesthetics prevent the proprietors thereof from having been born among the ranks of those who will be regarded by the forthcoming 6th and 7th round men as flesh-eating and liquor-drinking savages of the Royal Society period. Another run-on sentence. Wow.
Now, the aesthetics, the British aesthetics, was a movement in the late 1800s where artists were elevated to a higher social status than they were previously. Before that, they were hired by wealthy people and by the religions to decorate their chapels and their basilicas and their homes with art. So they were more considered an artisan or a working person. They weren't socially that very elevated. But this movement was to do exactly that, to draw them into society and make them part of society. But he's saying that none of this stuff that you think is so important has any substance to it. And now he gets it even funnier.
It depends on you to so immortalize your name as to force the future higher races to divide our age and call the subdivision of the Pleistocenic period. But this can never be so long as you labor under the impression that the purposes we have now in view would be met by reasonable temperance and self-restraint.
So Sinnett is countering that, yeah, well, all we have to do is just, maybe drink less wine and cut back a little. And KH isn't buying that.
Occult Science is a jealous mistress and allows not one bit of self-indulgence. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And it is fatal not only to the ordinary course of married life, but even to flesh-eating and wine-drinking. I am afraid that the archaeologists of the 7th round, when digging and one day unearthing Shimla, the future Pompeii of the Punjab, instead of finding the precious relics of the theosophical eclectic, will fish out nothing but some petrified or vitreous remains of the sumptuary allowance. Such is the latest prophecy current at Shigatse.
So, as I mentioned, sumptuary allowance is that expense account that Sinnett had for hobnobbing with the rich and famous.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
So KH is making very clear that our two worlds don't mix. The spiritual world and the high society world of London or New York or Paris or anywhere else, they don't mix. Mm-hmm. And yet, for many years, the Theosophical Society specifically went after the high society people. Even after Addie Besant came along, it was through the high society people of England that she got funds for her whole building extravaganza. Mm-hmm. And that's where all of these properties came from that are owned by different branches of the Theosophical Society today. So I want to end with just that one thing that he said in our last session. Occultism is not to be trifled with. It demands all or nothing. So Sinnett is trying very hard to say, well, maybe if we just cut back a little bit. And KH is saying, no, it's all or nothing. You can't go halfway. You can't just make some kind of a compromise. There is no compromise. So just so you're clear that it is all or nothing. Now, there are plenty of people who study what they can of this doctrine, and that is the safest way by far. We've said it many times. Don't try to take on something that you're not ready for, that you aren't willing to do, because it is all or nothing. So, next time, we will finish this letter. There's one more question that is completely different from the other questions. It has to do with mediumship and Eglinton and that sort of thing. So back to our regular programming next week.
Thank you so much.
Any final questions? Or
No, I think that was a good session.
Yeah, a lot of information, a lot of good stuff. And we will see you next week in session number 34.